Hee hee. I wonder what the Shao clan's faces will look like when our group of elite cultivators march out to attack them tomorrow. They will probably be frightened to death. Ha ha. The Shao clan has monopolized the Seven-Horn Mountain for centuries. They must have amassed a large fortune already. That's right. After this operation, we will definitely gain many benefits. Even if the sacred heavenly church take the bulk of it, the scraps will be enough for us to share. The Shao clan still has several girls, their flesh is tender and tight. They are all of good quality. I have been eyeing them for a long time. There is no need to be anxious. When the sky turns bright, they will all be ours. Ha ha ha. Xiao Chen withdrew his spiritual sense and revealed a scary expression. Now, he understood what was going on. Fortunately, the sacred heavenly church had not been problematic to deal with. Had he been delayed by another 6 hours, the Shao clan would have been in big trouble. Hundreds of elite martial grand masters, tens of martial saints, and an inferior grade martial king, such a force was enough to completely obliterate the Shao clan. Xiao Chen looked up at the eastern sky. It was currently pitch dark, the morning star had not yet risen. He jumped off the wall and started to walk out of the city. Because of the Seven-Horn Mountain, the Shao residence was not in the city. Instead, it was at the foot of the Seven-Horn Mountain, outside the city. The city was currently quiet. Aside from some early merchants, there was no other sound. Xiao Chen leapt lightly over a city wall several dozen meters tall. He avoided startling the soldiers on guard as he left the city. Then, after a bend in the road, he leapt to the top of an abandoned tea house. There, he took out a bow from his universe ring before closing his eyes to wait. The bow was the Soul Slayer bow. As Xiao Chen's vital qi increased, the might of the bow would likewise increase. Normally, he did not have much use for it, but now, it would be effective. This road was a funnel. All those that wanted to go to the Shao clan would have to pass here. Time went by slowly. Soon, the morning star appeared and the eastern sky brightened. In Mohei City, at the hall of the Zhang clan, Zhang Yan watched as the morning star started to rise in the east. Then, he said, "Move out. Let's wash the Shao clan in blood and monopolize Mohei City. Wash the Shao clan in blood and monopolize Mohei City. Wash the Shao clan in blood and monopolize Mohei City." The hundreds of elite cultivators in the hall opened their eyes and shouted excitedly. Hundreds of cultivators stood in formation. Under Zhang Yan's lead, they all released a strong killing intent as they quickly rushed out of the city. At this moment, the sky had brightened somewhat. The few travelers on the road were startled and their expressions changed greatly when they saw the Zhang clan's elite disciples exuding killing intent. Mohei City is going to change. An old man sighed. After the Zhang clan exited the city gates, their speed increased significantly. Their faces brimmed with eagerness. When the Zhang clan's troops thought of the vast resources of the Shao clan, the weapons in their hands trembled slightly. The wealth and glory would be sufficient to last them a lifetime. A guest elder of the Zhang clan said in a relaxed manner to Zhang Yan, "Clan head, what do you think the odds of success are for this operation?" Zhang Yan chuckled and said, "Is there a need to ask? 2 years ago, when the Lord Emissary personally made a move, Xiao Shang was severely injured. The other experts all left after that. With the Shao clan's current strength, they will only die. What did the Lord Emissary say? I remember that he reminded us to not truly eradicate the Shao clan." Zhang Yan replied calmly, "This group of people only recognizes money. As long as we give him 80% of the spoils, he will not say anything." To boost the morale of his troops, Zhang Yan turned his head back and shouted, "Brothers! Put in some more effort and run faster. Kill all the men of the Shao clan and all the silver, gold, treasures, natural treasures, and all sort of pretty girls will be yours." Pretty girls and wealth were very good motivators at this crucial time. The troops' morale immediately soared. When the guest elder at the side saw an opportunity, he flattered Zhang Yan, "With this level of morale, I estimate that we will be able to deal with the Shao clan in 2 hours." Zhang Yan nodded and smiled. That is possible. Wang. Right after Zhang Yan spoke, an arrow flew over. Before the guest elder's smile faded, a bloody hole appeared on his chest. The arrow did not stop or slow down. It proceeded to pierce through the chests of about 10 people before sticking itself into the ground, its fletching shaking heavily after it landed. Wang, 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 wang. The arrows flew from a distance, tearing through the air. They were fired continuously and were so fast that they could not be seen. People only heard miserable cries, and another 10-odd members of the Zhang clan's forces died. The speed of the arrows was simply too fast. In just a few seconds, more than 30 people died. They were all pierced through the chest, dying of a shattered heart. Zhang Yan blanched as he shouted in a panic, "Enemy attack! Get down! All of you, get down!" The remaining elite cultivators all paled with fright. Their companions had been alive just a moment ago. In the blink of an eye, they suddenly died. This situation was too terrifying. Shoo, shoo, shoo. 3 cultivators with slower reactions failed to get down in time. They were knocked into the air by the huge force behind the arrow. Even though these 3 cultivators raised essence shields and tried to protect themselves, their efforts were in vain. What is going on? Horror spread through the crowd. All the cultivators lay prone on the ground, not daring to even raise their heads. The troops were thrown into disarray by the situation. Just a moment ago, they were still thinking of washing the Shao clan in blood and splitting the treasure and women. Zhang Yan's cultivation was the highest. He raised his head and looked into the distance. He saw a white-robed youth standing on the roof of an abandoned teahouse 2 kilometers away. The youth was holding a bow and drawing its string as he watched the group expressionlessly. "Damn it! How dare you kill my Zhang clan's people? You must be tired of life." Zhang Yan's eyes looked like they were about to spew fire. He said to the few martial saint experts beside him, "Go and take out that person on the teahouse 2 kilometers away." The martial saints who were called out were very unwilling. However, when they saw Zhang Yan's expression, they could only carefully try to stand up and rush forward. Bang, bang, bang. Just when the martial saints raised their heads, before they could even cry out, an arrow pierced through their foreheads. Run! Seeing such a horrifying scene before them, the Zhang troops were thoroughly frightened. They immediately stood up and fled miserably. At this moment, they forgot all about washing the Shao clan in blood, basking in wealth and glory, or monopolizing Mohe City. If they died, no matter how much of the above they had, it would be for nothing. Zhang Yan panicked. Even after he called out a few times, no one listened to him, they only cared about running for their lives. However, this group of people did not even have a martial king. How could they run from Shao Chen? He merely moved several hundred meters in a flicker and drew his bow. As the Zhang clan's members died one by one under the arrow fire, Zhang Yan roared ferociously and boldly charged towards Shao Chen. However, the arrow that flew at Zhang Yan completely cowed him. That arrow was too fast. He had to execute a cloning technique before he could shift his body away at the last moment. The arrow brushed past Zhang Yan's chest, barely allowing him to preserve his life. After this, he could no longer be bothered about anything else as he joined the group in flight. All the same, no matter how fast they ran, they could not be as fast as Shao Chen. Even without the blood flame shoes, he could already achieve Mach 2. The moment this group of people left the city, they were destined for only one ending, death. Soon, only one person remained of the hundreds of cultivators, Zhang Yan. The corpse-filled big road in front of the city gates was a shocking sight. Blood flowed continuously out of Zhang Yan's mouth. He was in a panic as he ran towards the city with all his might. Shao Chen had a calm expression as he drew his bow back. Then, he locked onto Zhang Yan's chest with his spiritual sense. Finally, he released the arrow. He had used his full strength in this arrow. The injured Zhang Yan had no chance of dodging it. It was like Zhang Yan felt the threat. While he was frantically running away, he could not help but look back. But after looking back, he no longer had any opportunity to turn again. The arrow flying over struck his chest. A huge force exploded out, tossing Zhang Yan into the air. Finally, the arrow pinned him to the city walls before he stopped moving. The sun rose completely, shining its great light over the land. Before he died, Zhang Yan got to see his final sunrise. However, he could not figure out what had happened and what was going on. His previous words of, "That is possible," were still ringing in his ears. The sun had just risen, scattering its light throughout the land. The windows of the Shao clan's residence opened. The Shao clan disciples emerged from their rooms and headed for the practice grounds. Up on a platform, the Shao clan's clan head, Shao Shang, had arrived long ago. He was dressed in tight robes as he watched the Shao clan disciples sternly. "Morning practice has started. Raise your spirits. No one is allowed to be lazy." After Shao Shang's stern command, the disciples present started to practice the Shao clan's fist technique. Fist winds blew out, and with the bright sunlight, the Shao clan disciples were spirited. They did not know that just 2 hours ago, the Shao clan barely evaded a disaster. They also did not know that someone was watching them from a distance. 4 kilometers from the Shao clan residence, Xiao Chen watched the crowd on the practice grounds. When Xiao Chen circulated his essence to his eyes, a distance of 4 kilometers was nothing to him. He could see the entire Shao clan residence. Every tree, every blade of grass, every flower, he could see them all clearly. He merely stood there and watched, revealing a gentle smile on his handsome face. His hair and white robes fluttered in the cool breeze. "You keep looking at them. Do you really not intend to go in?" Ao Zhao's melodious voice came from the lunar shadow saber. Xiao Chen shook his head and said, "There is no need. I'll just watch." Ao Zhao continued asking, "You have done so much for the Shao clan. Your father will definitely not blame you. Do you really not want to ask him why he chased you away?" Xiao Chen did not say anything. After a long time, he withdrew his gaze. He said, "How could there be a father who would willingly chase away their own son? The pressure on him is definitely more than that on me. My strength is still insufficient to alleviate his pressure, it is best not to ask." Without enough strength, if Xiao Chen asked, he would only increase the pressure on the other person. When he became strong enough, everything would naturally be revealed. Z. The moisture in the air started to rise. Xiao Chen stretched out his hand and controlled the changes of this moisture. "Life bestowal spell," Xiao Chen shouted, and under his control, the moisture turned into 14 lively and realistic birds, chirping without end. Xiao Chen took out the remaining 14 stalks of 1,000-year-old spirit herbs. Then, he tied them to the feet of the birds before waving his hand and saying, "Go." The birds circled around in the air for a while before flying towards the Shao residence. After doing all these, Xiao Chen reluctantly withdrew his gaze from the Shao residence before turning to leave. The morning sun shone on Xiao Chen's back, casting a long black shadow that moved up and down on the road as he left. No one in the vast Shao residence knew that the youth who had been chased out of the clan 4 years ago returned and took a look at them from afar. Xiao Chen came and left quietly. He killed a group of people and left behind kind intentions before leaving with his mind at ease and without dragging his feet. Half a month later, Xiao Chen returned to the Heavenly Saber Pavilion to start his closed-door training. There were only 3 more months till the 5-nation youth competition. It was time for him to make his final preparations. At the same time, all the genius cultivators under this starry sky were also making their final spurt, all the sake of that moment where thousands would watch the strong fight one another. When strength reached its peak, it was bound to decline. When strength had declined to its weakest, it would strengthen. It had been 5,000 years since the Thunder Emperor appeared in the Tianwu continent. Since then, there had not been any new martial emperors. It had been a 5,000-year wait. Now, The age of geniuses was imminent and a grand scene was about to appear. There were the 5 great nations, the ancient desolate land, the barbarian tribes of the north, the 4 regions of the boundless sea. Under the starry sky, there were countless heroes, geniuses with bright futures. Who could stand out from the others and see the view at the peak? Who was the main character of this dazzling stage filled with stars in this continent? The answer would be found in the battle at the pinnacle 3 months later. Eastern Boundless Sea, in a forbidden area of the Divine Dragon Palace. There was a miniature spatial crack here. Once one passed through that crack, one would be able to go to the true demonic world. Surrounding the spatial crack was a golden cuboid barrier. 4 old martial monarchs of the Divine Dragon Palace stood guard here day and night. At this moment, the Eastern Sea's little dragon king, Xuanyuan Zantian, sat on his royal dragon horse, holding his heavenly war halberd, as he waited calmly before the forbidden area. The current dragon king of the Divine Dragon Palace stood at his side. The dragon king looked at Xuanyuan Zantian and asked, "Zantian, are you sure you want to go through this spatial crack? Do you know what it means to go through this spatial crack?" Xuanyuan Zantian nodded and replied, "There are only 3 months left. Those great Jin nation geniuses are remarkable. I need to enter the deep abyss of the demonic world for true experiential training." The Dragon King did not argue anymore. "Since you have already decided, then I will not stop you. If you die in there, I will choose another successor." The barrier slowly opened. Xuanyuan Zantian rode his royal dragon horse in without hesitation. He laughed loudly and said, "Old man, you only know how to curse me. Rest assured, I will definitely be sitting on your throne someday. No one will replace me, Xuanyuan Zantian, in ruling the 4 regions of the boundless sea." As the Dragon King watched Xuanyuan Zantian disappear into the spatial crack, he laughed to himself and said, "Such self-confidence, that's good." Qingyan Peak, Back Mountains. In the first month of Xiao Chen's return, he spent all his efforts on fixing the inadequacies of the lightning tribulation saber technique. In that fight with the masked man, Xiao Chen had come to understand its weaknesses and what he was lacking in the lightning tribulation technique, gathering the wind and clouds to summon the lightning. Xiao Chen's comprehension of the state of wind was insufficient. As for the mysterious phenomena on the lightning tribulation saber technique, that person had seen their weak points with one glance. Now that Xiao Chen knew about the lightning tribulation saber technique's weaknesses, it was not too difficult to fix them. Within 1 month, he managed to fix most of the weaknesses of the lightning tribulation saber technique that had been exposed. If he met that masked man again, he was confident that the other party would no longer find those weaknesses, which had resulted in the mysterious phenomenon collapsing and the might of the saber technique decreasing so easily. There was another problem giving Xiao Chen a headache. That was the 4th move of the 4-season saber technique. What should he use for winter, so he could find a saber technique that he could truly call his own? However, he was not too anxious. He practiced the martial techniques that he was familiar with during the day and cultivated the Purple Thunder Divine Incantation at night, strengthening his essence. Some comprehensions required enlightenment. If one could not figure something out, then the more one tried to think about it, the more they would not be able to figure out. That was a recipe for frustration. Only when one's heart was completely calm might one be able to see the light at the end of the tunnel. One might suddenly receive enlightenment and the problem plaguing them would be solved in an instant. When the Heavenly Saber Pavilion's founder created the lightning tribulation saber technique, he had also relied on this moment of enlightenment. Watching the tribulation of a spirit beast was the crux of his comprehension of this saber technique. Thus, Xiao Chen was in no rush. He could only treat it as a whetstone for cultivating his mental state. Even if he could never comprehend what he wanted, the growth of his mental state would be sufficient to make up for not finishing the saber technique. Who could be certain that it would be a loss or a gain? The sun rose and the sun set. Clouds gathered and scattered. 3 months remained to the start of the 5-nation youth competition. The days slowly trickled by. On this particular day, Xiao Chen was sitting in his room with his eyes closed as he cultivated. The moonlight poured through the window, peacefully spilling on the bed in front of him. Ka-ca. The two superior-grade spirit stones in his hands suddenly shattered. Xiao Chen opened his eyes and looked at the drained spirit stones, shaking his head helplessly. Now that he had advanced to half-step martial monarch, his rate of absorbing spiritual energy increased. Two superior-grade spirit stones were not sufficient for a night of cultivating. Furthermore, the crystal whirlpool in his dantian was like a bottomless pit. He was far from feeling a bottleneck. For Xiao Chen to reach martial monarch, he had to increase his essence to the bottleneck and open the sea of consciousness. He muttered, "I already opened the sea of consciousness long ago. However, my cultivation is hard to deal with. Even with another year, I will not reach the peak of half-step martial monarch." Xiao Chen glanced at the pale moonlight on the floor. The pale moonlight was like a coating of frost where it pooled. For no reason at all, it evoked a sense of grief. Moonlight gleaming like frost. Flowing waters may wound. Beauty rapidly wanes. Where do I seek my home? TL note. This is a Chinese poem about regrets at leaving home, a poem about grief. Suddenly, Xiao Chen recalled this poem. He smiled faintly and said, "However, such grieving emotions do not fit me." Taking out two more superior-grade spirit stones, he prepared to continue cultivating. Then, he suddenly stopped, an idea suddenly sparking in his mind. I have been thinking about what can represent winter aside from snow. Isn't this white frost before me what I'm seeking? That's right. It's definitely right. Xiao Chen started laughing loudly. He said excitedly, "The ancients did not cheat me. A moment of inspiration, a rapid advancement in comprehension. A sudden enlightenment. A sudden enlightenment, indeed." Continuing to laugh loudly, he picked up his lunar shadow saber and walked out the door. The fourth move of the four-season saber technique could use frost as its primer, using the state of grief. Xiao Chen closed his eyes while he was in the forest, thinking about the spark of inspiration that flashed in his head. After a while, he opened his eyes, grasped the lunar shadow saber with his right hand, and quickly drew it. Slowly circulating the four-season saber technique, Xiao Chen eased his foot forward. The ambient temperature dropped quickly as the saber light moved about. A thin layer of frost appeared in the forest, everything within a kilometer became covered in rime. Moonlight gleaming like frost, flowing waters may wound. Xiao Chen shouted, swinging his saber. The state of grief in the saber exploded together with the frost that covered everything within a kilometer. Shua, shua, shua. In this instant, all the trees in the forest shattered. Crunching sounds rang out non-stop. Xiao Chen sheathed his saber, and all the trees within a kilometer fell. The vast forest disappeared, leaving only the frost on the ground. This move was not imposing or overbearing. It only turned the saber technique into frost, slowly infusing the state of grief. It killed silently. By the time one was aware of it, there would no longer be a chance to turn things around. Just like all the trees within a kilometer. With one saber technique, all life was extinguished, leaving only the white frost. Xiao Chen said to himself, "This is the four-season saber technique's fourth move. Let's call it Grieving Frost." Spring thunder chop, burning to desolation, fated person in autumn waters, in grieving frost. Xiao Chen had finished comprehending spring, summer, autumn, and winter, completing his own four-season saber technique. Now, this four-season saber technique had become a unique peak superior grade earth-ranked saber technique that belonged to him alone, one that was infinitely close to a heaven-ranked saber technique. This was completely created by Xiao Chen, there was no other like it. As for the final cycle of seasons, there was no need for any comprehension. This was because there was only one meaning to the cycle of seasons, eternal transformation until the end of time. Everything in the world, whether tall mountains or the vast sea, would dry up or crumble one day. The heavens would fall, the earth would age, and the vast seas would dry up. The plants and animals would die and regrow in a never-ending cycle. The cycle of the 4 seasons, spring, summer, autumn, and winter, would never change. Time slowly went by. The start of the 5-nation youth competition drew nearer day by day. 2 months, 1 month, 2 weeks. Soon, only 10 days remained to the start of the 5-nation youth competition. Tianwu continent, the head of the 5 great nations, the Great Jin Nation, Supreme Sky Sect. This was only of the 10 great sects of the Great Jin Nation. Naturally, it overflowed with talents and geniuses. However, the peak genius of this sect was none other than Yu Chengxi. Ever since Yu Chengxi obtained the daybreak flower, her cultivation had risen very quickly. Her morning sun incantation also advanced just as quickly. This progress resulted in Yu Chengxi leaving many of her sect mates in the dust. They could only look up to her and try their best to catch up. On this particular day, a beautiful multicolored light blossomed on Yu Chengxi's personal morning sun peak, radiating a boundless beauty. All the passing disciples stopped to take a look. Their expressions were full of shock. A multicolored light of sunrise. This is a sign of the morning sun incantation's 13th layer. First senior sister will be coming out of her closed-door training. A disciple in the Supreme Sky Sect's uniform said excitedly. First senior sister had been in closed-door training for 3 months already. Her strength is bound to be much higher when she comes out this time. Quickly, look, the elders are here. Unexpectedly, the sight of the multicolored light of sunrise startled the elders as well. 3 figures flew over from the Supreme Sky Sect's main peak. They were 3 old men with very strong auras. When they stood next to each other, the wind behind them stopped blowing instantly. The air turned solid. Many disciples felt like they could not breathe. The person in the middle of the 3 revealed a gratified smile. He said softly, "It has been 1,000 years already since anyone has managed to cultivate the morning sun incantation to the 13th layer. Yu Chengxi has now truly entered the ranks of the peak experts in the Great Jin Nation." The expression of the gray-robed old man beside him was also filled with satisfaction. He muttered, "First elder, with Yu Chengxi's current strength, she should be able to obtain a top 10 ranking in the upcoming 5-nation youth competition, right?" The first elder in the middle said solemnly, "It is hard to say. The Drifting Snow Sword Sect, Sun Moon Sect, Supreme Yi Palace, and the other sects have geniuses as well. Furthermore, there are the 8 noble clans. We can only be sure when she comes out." Boom! Suddenly, a resplendent ring of light erupted from the multicolored light, like the morning sun slowly rising. Right in the middle of the ring of light was the beautiful Yu Chengxi. Under the illumination of the multicolored light, she looked like a fairy, refined and elegant. She is out. When all the multicolored lights gathered together, they formed a rainbow bridge. Yu Chengxi walked on the rainbow bridge towards the 3 elders. Chengxi greets first martial uncle, second martial uncle, and third martial uncle. Yu Chengxi smiled as she bowed slightly. The first elder carefully gauged her. After that, shock flooded his face as he muttered, "Consummation half-step martial monarch." Yu Chengxi revealed a faint smile on her face. She said, "I have comprehended the state of light and the state of cloud to their limits. I also reached great perfection in the morning sun fist." The first elder laughed loudly and said, "Good. Now you are qualified to compete for the final 2 positions of the top 10. The 8 noble clans had been around for 10,000 years. Each of them had produced a martial emperor before. Their descendants all possessed the bloodline of an emperor. Their talents were all shocking and very strong. In every 5-nation youth competition, the top 8 would be occupied by different people. However, there was one thing that did not change: the top 8 were always occupied by the disciples of these 8 noble clans. This already formed a fixed pattern and would not change. There had never been any unexpected surprises. That was why the first elder could only say that Yu Chengxi could compete for the 9th and 10th ranks. The top 8 ranks were untouchable. However, Yu Chenxi's expression did not change. She only looked in the direction of the distant Great Qin nation in the west. Anticipation gleamed in her eyes. Yu Chenxi muttered softly to herself, I wonder, how strong is that fellow now? 2 years have passed. I relied on the daybreak flower to advance my strength rapidly. He has no sect behind him and is an independent cultivator. Will he be able to keep up? Great Jin Nations, one of the 10 great sects, Evil Moon Pavilion. The top genius of the Evil Moon Pavilion, Bai Zan, sat expressionless above the center of a full moon-shaped lake. At first glance, the lake was calm and peaceful. However, if one looked carefully, there were countless spots of red light jumping around under the mirror-like lake surface. There were so many, the lake seemed to be equal parts water and red light. If one's cultivation reached martial monarch and could extend their mental energy, they would be shocked to discover that the red lights were all hot sparks. Fire and water opposed each other. This was the eternal principle of nature. However, at this moment, many sparks burned strangely within the vast lake. Suddenly, the calm Bai Zan shouted, raging frost flame wave. The lake water that had been suppressed for so long exploded, surging up from the surface. Countless pillars of water froze into ice. The sparks became raging flames, soaring into the sky. Finally, the ice and fire that were tolerating each other formed a huge energy wave quickly heading to a mountain range in the distance. Bang! The vast energy exploded, blasting the 1-kilometer-tall mountain peak into dust. However, that was not all. Unexpectedly, a huge, deep pit appeared in the ground where the mountain peak used to be. It was 100 meters wide and so deep that the bottom could not be seen. Bai Zan revealed a maniacal smile as he laughed loudly, perfect tolerance of ice and fire. I have finally achieved it. Xiao Chen, you managed to escape with your life in the boundless sea. However, I will defeat you before everyone in the upcoming 5-nation youth competition. Tianwu Continent, Great Chu Nation, Heavenly Sword Gate. Ding Fengqiu stood upright on a mountain peak, holding his hands behind his back. 18 swords flew around in the air in front of him, moving in all sorts of formations. The long, slender swords in the air vibrated without end. Everywhere they passed, a pitch-black crack appeared quickly before disappearing. These swords could temporarily tear open space, showing how mighty they were. It was hard to imagine. Jin Wuji quickly rushed over from behind. When he saw this scene, he exclaimed in shock, Senior brother, your resistance fencing can now control 18 swords. Shoo! Ding Fengqiu casually collected the 18 swords and returned them to his spatial ring. He smiled gently and said, that's right. However, I cannot sustain it for long. Jin Wuji said joyfully, that is great. That what's his name, Xiao Chen is definitely not a match for you anymore. With a continuous stream of attacks from 18 swords, no one under martial monarch would be able to survive that. Appearing very calm, Ding Fengqiu continued to smile gently as he said, it is hard to say. Let's not speak about this for now. Why are you looking for me? Jin Wuji recovered his wits and said, the sect master told me to come look for you. He instructed me to tell you that there are 7 more days to the 5-nation youth competition and to call you over to select a secret treasure. Let's go, then. Similar incidents were taking place in every corner of the Tianwu continent as the 5-nation youth competition drew closer. All the geniuses in closed-door cultivation started to come out. They emerged with boundless confidence and looked forward to the day of the 5-nation youth competition. In the back mountains of Qingyan Peak, Xiao Chen sat before a waterfall, leisurely watching the water crashing down endlessly. 3 days ago, he had concluded his training of the 4-season saber technique. He had finished the cycle of seasons and named it Endless Growth. Xiao Chen had practiced the lightning tribulation saber technique to great perfection and finished comprehending the 4-season saber technique. He would not be able to advance his cultivation much in this short period of time. He also had other techniques, like the Battle Sage Origins changing character formula and strength character formula, or the Azure Dragon Martial Spirit's exclusive Saber technique, the Dragon Subduing Slash, and exclusive movement technique, the Azure Dragon Cloud Soaring Art. These were peak martial techniques in the Tianwu continent. However, due to various reasons, he was unable to cultivate them. Xiao Chen thought for a while and decided that there was no more need to keep training. So, he came to the waterfall every day and chatted with Ao Zhao. All he could do was to quietly wait for that day to come, tempering his state of mind. The Battle Sage Origins changing character formula required Xiao Chen's cultivation to reach a more profound level before he could continue practicing it. Otherwise, he would only be scratching the surface and his move would be easily broken by his opponent. As for the strength character formula, although it was hidden in the Lunar Shadow Saber, he had no way to access it. He was confused about this and did not know where to start. Xiao Chen had used the Dragon Subduing Slash before. He had done it while his cultivation was insufficient. He still clearly remembered the pain he had experienced back then. If he wanted to live, he would not dare to use it. He suspected that the requirement for this Dragon Subduing Slash was not on cultivation but the physical body. Once the physical body reached a certain standard, he would be able to endure that horrifying energy wave, controlling it as he pleased. After you reach Martial Monarch, you will be able to cultivate the Battle Sage Origins changing character formula. In Sang Emu's early days, he did not rely on the changing character formula to achieve fame. Ao Zhao continued calmly from the Lunar Shadow Saber. However, it is also possible that you are not suited to cultivating the changing character formula. That would mean that you will never be able to reach the level of developing your opponent's martial techniques. Xiao Chen smiled calmly. That would be fine. Everyone has their own path to take. I am a bladesman and the Thunder Emperor was a swordsman. It would be hard for me to follow the exact same path he did. A saber was a saber and a sword was a sword. There was an inherent difference that could not be bridged between a bladesman and a swordsman. A bladesman was tyrannical, bold, and powerful. There was no other special characteristics. However, a swordsman was different. The sword was the nobleman of weapons. No matter how tyrannical, bold, and powerful it would still have an air of elegance. Of course, it would be impossible to say which was stronger. It would definitely depend on the individual's strength. Surprised, Ao Zhao blurted out, "Trashy master, I have underestimated you. What you mean is that you will not be the second Thunder Emperor but the white-robed bladesman Xiao Chen." He smiled gently and did not confirm or deny it. He changed the topic, saying, "I heard that the Thunder Emperor managed to defeat many noble clan geniuses in the 5-nation youth competition. Speaking of which, exactly what rank did he achieve?" The era of the Thunder Emperor was just like the present. They were both eras of geniuses. Geniuses filled the lands. It was a glorious time. The name of the Thunder Emperor, Sang Mu, started to shake the Tianwu continent after the battle in the Wind Cloud Arena. However, because it had been too long ago, no one in the Great Qin nation was sure about what rank the Thunder Emperor achieved. Just when Ao Zhao was about to reply, she heard footsteps. She could only stop the conversation there and say, "Someone is coming." "Ha ha. Xiao Chen, you are really free. You still have time to watch the waterfall." Lu Sufeng walked over, radiant with happiness. He could not stop smiling. Xiao Chen turned his head to look and a light flashed in his eyes. He performed a cupped fist salute and said, "Congratulations on breaking through to Martial King." Lu Sufeng chuckled and said, "I broke through yesterday. It's all thanks to your spirit stones and spirit herbs. Otherwise, I would not be able to break through the bottleneck to Martial King so fast." Xiao Chen said calmly, "It is just a small matter. Why are you looking for me?" With a helpless expression, Lu Sufeng replied, "I really don't know what to say about you. There is another 7 days to the sign-up time of the 5-nation youth competition. We are leaving immediately. The First Elder is currently gathering all the people in the Heavenly Saber Pavilion who are qualified. The requirements to participate in the five-nation youth competition had already been released. Like Lu Sufeng had anticipated, the minimum was a martial king under the age of 24. Compared to the previous five-nation youth competition, the requirements had been raised by one cultivation realm. However, the number of people who would take part would be much higher this time. At the heaven viewing platform in the main hall of the Heavenly Saber Pavilion, Xiao Chen saw the other contestants of the Heavenly Saber Pavilion. Aside from him and Murong Chong, there were 4 other people. They were all people whom Xiao Chen recognized: Baikan Peak's Mu Heng, Tianyu Peak's Zhang Lai, Yun Kexin, and the recently broken through Lu Sufeng. Out of the entire Heavenly Saber Pavilion's 5,000-odd people, only 6 people qualified. It had to be said that the turnout was quite shameful. The few people exchanged glances for greetings. Since the first elder had not arrived, they started chatting casually. They had known one another before this and had been through life and death in the strange space. There was no problems between them and they started chatting together excitedly. Only Murong Chong was rather proud and aloof. He simply closed his eyes and did not participate. Mu Heng looked at Xiao Chen and said regretfully to Yun Kexin and Zhang Lai, "Although there were some differences in our strengths when we were in the strange space, the gap was not large. However, in a mere 2 years, Xiao Chen completely left us in the dust." Xiao Chen said calmly, "Aside from talent and aptitude, a cultivator needs fortuitous encounters and luck to achieve success. Perhaps in another 2 years, you all might rise up after an fortuitous encounter." Shaking her head, Yun Kexin argued, "I feel that what you said are just secondary. What decides how far a cultivator goes is the character of the cultivator." Between the few of them, they chatted about a few other topics. Not long after, the first elder, Zhang Kai, lead the second elder and the third elder over. Zhang Kai got right to the point. The five-nation youth competition is at the Great Jin Nation's Dragon Ceiling Mountain Range. It is very far from the Heavenly Saber Pavilion, so we need to leave early. If you have other matters to settle, I can give you another hour to deal with them. We will immediately depart after an hour. Xiao Chen and the others shook their heads to indicate that they did not have anything to settle. Zhang Kai nodded and said, "In that case, we will depart now." The few of them followed Zhang Kai out. When they reached the open space in front of the hall, they found a crystalline jade ship parked there. Lu Sufeng said with astonishment in his voice, "Isn't this ancestral martial ant's personal golden jade glazed ship? It is a high-ranked superior grade secret treasure. Is ancestral martial ant coming with us as well?" Zhang Kai nodded with a complicated expression. "Yes. All the sects in the world will be going to the Dragon Ceiling Mountain Range. We cannot let the Heavenly Saber Pavilion be shamed. Furthermore, there are some matters that are not as simple as you think. We need to show off some of our strength." On the bow of the ship, the luxuriously dressed Shen Manjin smiled faintly and said, "Zhang Kai, you don't have to tell the younger generation about this matter. Come on up. The Great Qin Nation, Misty Sword Sect, on a mountain peak." Chu Chaoyun looked deeply into the churning clouds in front. It was unclear what he was thinking about. The Misty Sword sect master said sullenly, "Chaoyun, although there are 9 people in our Misty Sword sect who qualify for the five-nation youth competition, you are probably the only one who can make it past the first round." Chu Chaoyun turned around and smiled faintly. "Sect master, rest assured. Whether it is for myself or to repay the help the Misty Sword sect has given me, I will definitely do my best in the five-nation youth competition." When the Misty Sword sect master heard this, he felt more at ease. Chu Chaoyun's origins were mysterious, even he felt his strength to be unfathomable. If Chu Chaoyun used his true strength, he would definitely be able to make it into the top 20. The amount of luck that would be obtained would be sufficient for them to continue on without falling in this vast world. That's good. I will not bother saying anything else, then. We will depart tomorrow. You should use today to make your preparations. Southern Boundless Sea. The Southern Sea's 4 heroes were gathered before a table. They were all excited and eager without exception. We are finally departing. I have long wanted to go and challenge those great Jin Nation geniuses. I want to see if the 8 great noble clans and the 10 great sects are what legends make them out to be. Third brother, don't be overconfident. Although the spiritual energy in our boundless sea is very dense and no lower than that of the great Jin Nation, the legacies and inheritance we have are slightly weaker than theirs. Don't let your guard down. Big brother is right. However, the 4 of us are not weak at all. We are able to become famous in the boundless sea. Our results in the continent should not be any worse. The leader of the Southern Sea's 4 heroes picked up his wine cup and said, "That's right. Normally, we do not bother to go out. Now that we are going out, we must spread the name of the Southern Sea's 4 heroes. Come, let's drink. May we 4 be able to succeed in our matches and make it to the top 50. That will definitely happen. Cheers. Cheers." Bang. The 4 of them clinked their cups and downed their wine in one gulp. After that, they shattered their wine cups and laughed heartily. Finally, they went out and headed for the warship that was already waiting. Eastern Boundless Sea, forbidden area of the Divine Dragon Palace. 4 martial monarch elders were currently watching the spatial crack within the barrier anxiously. The hope of the Divine Dragon Palace, the Eastern Sea's little dragon king, Xuanyuan Zontian, had already been in the demonic world for more than 2 months. 3 days had passed since the appointed time for Xuanyuan Zontian's return, but he had not appeared yet. Given Xuanyuan Zontian's memory, he would definitely not forget the appointed time. Unless, there was only one possibility, he had fallen. The 4 martial monarch elders all had unsightly expressions on their faces. Xuanyuan Zontian was the hope of the Divine Dragon Palace. He could even be said to the hope of the entire boundless sea. For the past 1,000 years, there had been very few geniuses that they were sure would become martial sages. The Divine Dragon Palace had invested a large amount of resources in Xuanyuan Zontian. If such a person fell, the loss would be hard to bear. Your Majesty, we have waited for 3 days and 3 nights already. It is time to choose another person. The Divine Dragon Palace still needs someone to lead the team to participate in the 5-nation youth competition, an elder could not help but suggest. The Dragon King's sharp eyes looked very sullen. He said in a powerful voice, "There is no need to say anything else. Zontian is worth me waiting another 7 days and 7 nights. No one else can elevate the Divine Dragon Palace in this grand age." Dong, dong, dong. Right after the Dragon King spoke, heavy footsteps came from the barrier. Every step was filled with power, making the ground shake. The 4 elders' expressions changed greatly. Suspecting that some powerful demons had come out from the spatial crack, they quickly took a look. The 4 elders only saw a completely injured Xuanyuan Zontian coming out. His purple robes were completely dyed red with blood. He carried the royal dragon horse, which was even more injured than him, on his shoulder. The 4 revealed extremely shocked expressions. This royal dragon horse weighed some 10 tons. Despite being so heavily injured, Xuanyuan Zontian carried the horse back. Bang! Xuanyuan Zontian tossed the heavenly war halberd in his right hand and the barrier that could stop a rank 8 demonic beast immediately shattered. Sorry. Something unexpected happened that resulted in my being delayed. I am not too late, right? Ancient desolate land, under the vast heavenly extermination lake. A vast white jade palace floated quietly in the water. This palace was the mysterious headquarters of the Myriad Fiend Palace. Xiaobai was seriously training the heart-nourishing universe sword technique in a garden of the palace. As the sword light flashed, winds blew. The world seemed to be turned upside down here. A bright light flickered at Xiaobai's chest. As the light flickered, the might of the sword technique doubled. The flickering light was what many swordsmen dreamed of having, a sword heart. In 2 years, Xiaobai's pure and innocent face had lost some of its childishness and gained a hint of youth. Her exquisite body had become more graceful. Together with a nebulous winsomeness, it gave her a certain sense of beauty, making one fall for her charms at first sight. Dong, dong, dong. Footsteps could be heard. Xiaobai withdrew her sword and immediately looked back. She discovered Mu Xinya walking over. Xiaobai immediately revealed a joyful smile as she quickly rushed over. Elder sister Xinya, are we going to the great Jin nation already? Naturally, as one of the three peak geniuses of the Myriad Fiend Palace, Mu Xinya would be representing the Myriad Fiend Palace in the five-nation youth competition. She patted Xiaobai's head and said, yes, we are about to leave immediately. Xiaobai continued, elder sister Xinya, elder brother Xiao Chen will definitely take part, right? A faint smile appeared on Mu Xinya's face as the image of Xiao Chen's face flashed through her mind. She was thinking of Xiao Chen's handsome countenance as he had looked in the ancient desolate tower. Mu Xinya nodded seriously and said, he will definitely go. Xiaobai smiled jubilantly and said, that is great. I finally can see elder brother Xiao Chen again. Up within the clouds, Shen Manjin's golden jade-glazed ship flew at Mach 3 as it headed for the great Jin nation's dragon-sealing mountain range. The group could see several warships in the sky. They were all headed in the same direction as the golden jade-glazed ship. Aside from warships, there were also many cultivators traveling alone, riding on flying spirit beasts. With a quick glance, one could discover several cultivators at every interval. Naturally, these people were going to the dragon-sealing mountain range. However, only a small portion would be there to participate in the five-nation youth competition. Most of them would watch. This was the five-nation youth competition that would herald the start of the Age of Geniuses. This is something that would not happen even in 1,000 years. This had made all the cultivators in the continent curious, everyone wanted to watch. Who would be the main character in this Age of Geniuses? Who would be in the spotlight of this stage? Who would have the last laugh? Who was the true main character? However, there were limited seats for spectators. The Wind Cloud Arena's spectator stands would definitely not contain all the cultivators. So, these cultivators had to rush over early. If they were late, they might be making a wasted trip. The golden jade-glazed ship moved very fast. Most of the spirit beasts and warships around them could not keep up. Xiao Chen and the others stood on the deck, watching the scenery and casually chatting. Suddenly, Xiao Chen thought of something. He asked, how come I don't see Leng Liasu? With her strength and potential, after training in the Holy Land for 2 years, she should have already become a martial king. That's right. Why did Leng Liasu not come back? Unexpectedly, despite being the Heavenly Saber Pavilion's young pavilion master, she had not returned at such a crucial moment. When the group heard Xiao Chen ask, they could not help but feel that it was strange as well. Suddenly, the previously silent Murong Chong said, she already became a core disciple of the Phoenix's Passion Palace and had gone to the upper realm long ago. The people of the three holy lands cannot come and compete for luck. When the group heard this, they were astonished. At the same time, they felt that it was strange that Murong Chong was aware of this. After 6 days of flying at Mach 3, the golden jade-glazed ship finally arrived near the great Jin nation's dragon-sealing mountain range. They only needed another half-day's flight to get there. Zhang Kai and the other 2 elders came out on the deck and introduced the situation of the great Jin nation to the group. Then they gave a simple explanation of the five-nation youth competition's rules. The five-nation youth competition is divided into the qualifiers and the arena battles. No matter how many people sign up, only 400 people will clear the qualifiers. That is to say, only 400 people in the entire Tianwu continent can step onto the Wind Cloud Arena. Lu Sufeng was shocked when he heard this. This is very strict. With so many people being disqualified in the first round, might it not result in some strong contestants getting overlooked? Zhang Kai smiled and said, it is possible. However, that is very rare. The method of selection is very simple and fair. You will understand better when you are there. When the ship neared the dragon-sealing mountain range, the number of warships they saw increased. Eventually, it came to the point where a warship was visible every 100 meters. There were at least 10,000 warships and countless flying spirit beasts densely filling the air. This was a grand sight to behold. As there were too many warships, Shenmanjin had no choice but to slow down the golden jade-glazed ship and continue at a reduced speed. 4 hours later, Zhang Kai pointed at a mountain range in front and said, "That is the dragon-sealing mountain range." Xiao Chen and the others quickly looked in the direction Zhang Kai pointed at. They saw more than 100 peaks over 10 kilometers high at the limits of their vision. The positioning of the mountain peaks was very peculiar. Strangely, they formed a huge ring. Then, in the middle of the ring of mountains were boundless clouds. These clouds were also different from the usual white clouds. They clearly looked denser and their color was deeper. From a distance, the mountain peak ring and the clouds in the middle looked like a prison, like they were trapping something. There were several tall towers on the summits of the mountains. Occasionally, warships and flying spirit beasts would stop there. Xiao Chen felt it was strange. There are hundreds of mountain peaks here. Which one is Dragon-Sealing Mountain? Zhang Kai smiled gently and replied, "It is the one in the middle." However, because it was too tall, something had already chopped it down long ago. We can't see it now, but after we pass the ring of mountains, we will be able to. After flying for another 10 minutes, the golden jade-glazed ship stopped at a mountain peak in the ring of mountains. Many warships and huge flying spirit beasts had stopped at this mountain peak. A large number of people were heading for the towers here. Zhang Kai led the 6 people into one of the towers. The sign-up counter for the 5-nation youth competition was located in the hall. The sign-up procedures were rather simple. After examining the 6 of bone age and recording their sect and names, the staff at the counter gave a dark dragon-shaped jade pendant to everyone. "Come, let's go up to the top." As the group climbed up the spiral staircase, they were filled with anticipation. Soon, they arrived at the top floor. The top floor had no roof. When the group stood up, they could see their surroundings without obstruction. The scenery for thousands of kilometers around was clearly visible. Many cultivators had already gathered on the top floor. Xiao Chen threaded through the crowd and headed to the edge facing the center of the Ring of Peaks. What astonished Xiao Chen was that the center of the Ring of Peaks was, unexpectedly, a large city. This city was no smaller than Zaihe Province's provincial capital. When looking down from the top floor, the buildings in the city were like ants. Only some unusual circular rock pillars, which stood several kilometers tall, were more visible. These rock pillars filled the entire city. Some were tall and some were short. Together they formed a strange picture. Every rock pillar had a huge dragon carving coiled around it. If one looked carefully, they would discover that this was a city built at the middle of a mountain. The huge mountain looked like it had been chopped down halfway up. Then, a large city was built on the stump. Zhang Kai explained to the 6, "That is Dragon-Sealing City. Below that is the stump of the chopped-off Dragon-Sealing Mountain. Do you see those dragon pillars? When the qualifiers start, all the contestants on the 3rd floor and above of every tower at the Ring of Peaks will fly towards Dragon-Sealing City at the same time. As long as you are able to stand on top of a dragon pillar, you will be qualified to participate in the arena battles. There are 10 dragon pillars in the middle that are clearly taller than the rest. If you are able to stand on those, you will become a seeded contestant. That is also the place with the most intense competition. As for the highest dragon pillar, whoever who stands on it will be the first seed. They will enjoy some advantages in regard to the competition arrangements." After Lu Sufeng heard that, he said, "It turns out that the first stage is so simple. This is easy." One of the old men from another nation could not help but smile coldly. "Idiot, in every 5-nation youth competition, 1/3 of the contestants will fall and die here. There will only be more this year. How could it be as simple as you think?" Zhang Kai followed up in a serious tone, indeed. In order to truly gain the qualifications to enter the arena battles, one has to stand on the pillar for at least a minute. Once you get on it, you cannot leave. If someone knocks you down before you stand on it for a minute, you will have to start again. The person who spoke earlier added, you will suffer from many attacks from all directions in that 1 minute. Even if there are not 10,000 participants, there would be 7 or 8,000. Just think about how intense the fight for just 400 spots would be. When Lu Sufeng and the others heard this, they could not help but feel nervous. No wonder the first elder said that no one would be able to take advantage of the situation and obtain the qualifications for the arena battles. 1 minute was just about 60 breaths of time. Normally speaking, that would go by quickly. However, when one was on the dragon pillar and defending for 1 minute, it would be hard to endure the attacks coming from all directions. This was because it was not a one-on-one fight. The attacks one would have to endure were the killing moves or trump cards of countless people from all directions. If one was not careful, they might fall off. Those with the qualification to take part in the 5-nation youth competition were all outstanding youths. For them to become martial kings before the age of 24, if they were not outstanding youths, then what could they be? However, these 7 or 8,000 outstanding youths would have to go through a round of elimination first, which would allow 400 genius cultivators to stand out. One could easily imagine how strong and talented these 400 people had to be. The high quality of the 5-nation youth competition left everybody stupefied. Zhang Kai wanted to befriend the person who had spoken. He performed a cupped fist salute and said, I am the Heavenly Saber Pavilion's first elder, Zhang Kai. Might I ask for your esteemed name? The person at the side seemed to be in his 50s, but he was still very energetic and had a drawn-out aura. Clearly, he was also a half-step martial monarch that had reached his limits. When that person heard Zhang Qi's words, he returned the cupped fist salute and said, I am not an esteemed personage. My humble family name is Du and my name is Wei. I am the person in charge of the great Jin nation's Breaking Saber Gate's inner sect. Breaking Saber Gate. Zhang Kai thought for a while but could not recall any powerful sects in the great Jin nation called the Breaking Saber Gate. Du Wei smiled gently and said, Brother Zhang, there is no keep to overthink this. The Breaking Saber Gate is just a third-rate sect in the great Jin nation. How many people from your sect is participating this time? When Zhang Kai thought about it, that seemed about right. Although the great Jin nation had the 10 great sects, they also had several small sects as well. He pointed to Xiao Chen and the others as he answered, not many, just 6. A young disciple beside Du Wei laughed mockingly and said, I have heard about the Heavenly Saber Pavilion. It seems like that it is one of the great Qin nation's 3 great sects. Unexpectedly, they have only 6 people. Even as a third-rate sect, our Breaking Saber Gate has 10-odd people. That disciple's tone was clearly pleased. It contained the pride that the disciples of the great Jin nation had. When one heard it, they would feel displeased. The great Jin nation had many spirit veins and was filled with spiritual energy. It was also very large. For the past 10,000 years, they had been able to completely suppress the other 4 great nations. Zhang Kai had a somewhat embarrassed expression on his face. Unexpectedly, this young disciple had such poor manners. Xiao Chen frowned slightly. A certain sharpness shone in his eyes as he said coldly, no matter how many pieces of rotten wood there are, they will never be able to build a house. TL note. No matter how many pieces of rotten wood there are, they will never be able to build a house. In case the meaning is not clear, this means that no matter how many weak people grouped up, they would not be able to defeat the strong. Even a third-rate sect of the great Jin nation was so arrogant. An insignificant disciple dared to speak to the older generation as though they were equals. This was an eye-opener to the great Jin nation's arrogance. That young disciple angrily demanded, "What do you mean? Are you calling us trash? You are just the disciple of a sect from the weakest of the 4 nations. Your words are really bold. You better make sure that I, Song Qing, don't run into you during the arena battles. Senior brother, don't bother with him. Do you even think that he can make it into the arena battles? When disciples of the various sects, or the independent cultivators, saw this scene, they all watched interestedly. Du Wei frowned slightly and did not wish to allow matters to escalate. He said apologetically to Zhang Kai, "Brother Zhang, I apologize for my disciple's rashness." Even though Du Wei said that, he did not make his disciple apologize. He only led the Breaking Saber Gate's disciples to another area of the tower. Before they left, Song Qing looked mockingly at Xiao Chen and the others, clearly looking down on them. Lu Sufeng said angrily, "Who exactly are these people? They are just a third-rate sect of the great Jin nation, yet they dare to speak like that." Zhang Kai said helplessly, "Never mind, this is how the great Jin nation's people are." Had Zhang Kai known that the old man was from the great Jin nation, he would not have attempted to befriend him. When facing the people of the other four nations, the great Jin nation's people had the mentality of themselves being better than others. Only when everyone had gathered would the first stage begin. There were still many sects that had not arrived. The group could only wait. As for the incident with the Breaking Saber Gate, it was just a minor matter, everyone soon forgot about it. Time slowly went by. Suddenly, someone in the crowd at the top floor exclaimed, "The Supreme Sky Sect's warship is coming." Cultivators in several towers on the mountain peaks immediately turned to take a look. A golden warship flew over from the distance. A banner exclusive to the Supreme Sky Sect fluttered on the bow of the ship. It was easy to make out with one glance. Xiao Chen sighed to himself. The attraction of a great sect in the great Jin nation was indeed on a different level. The moment they appeared, they drew the gazes of everyone. "I hear that the Supreme Sky Sect's Yu Chengxi already cultivated the Morning Sun incantation to the 13th layer. Back then, a multicolored light appeared. Their sect master has announced that their target this time is a top 10 rank. It is not easy to reach the top 10. None of the great sects are easy to deal with." As the crowd discussed, another warship flew over. Someone recognized it and exclaimed, "The Evil Moon Pavilion is here as well." Bai Zan managed to get into the top 20 the previous time. I wonder, what rank will he obtain this time? The Drifting Snow Sword Sects and Supreme Yi Palace's warships are here too. They are really powerful. The heirs of these two sects managed to rank in the top 10 the previous time. I wonder if they will be able to keep their rankings this time. The Sun Moon sect is here too. The 10 great sects of the great Jin nation are all here. As the warships of the 10 great sects approached, they casually stopped at a mountain peak. The Drifting Snow Sword sect's warship unexpectedly stopped at the peak Xiao Chen's group was at. However, the Drifting Snow Sword sect's people went to a different tower. When Xiao Chen took a look, he discovered that the Drifting Snow Sword sect had driven out the other people from that tower. Damn it! The Drifting Snow Sword sect's people are really tyrannical. The moment they arrived, they chased all of us away. The displaced cultivators had no choice but to come to Xiao Chen and the others' tower. They cursed and swore as they came over. Someone laughed coldly. "All you dare to do is curse and swear here." The participants of the Drifting Snow Sword sect number in the hundreds. Why don't you say what you just said to their faces? Xiao Chen ignored the quarrels of these people. Instead, he stared at a white figure at the tower in front. That person was a young man. That person was dressed in white and his gaze was cold as he stared at the tallest dragon pillar in Dragon Ceiling City. That person just stood quietly, not moving at all. However, he looked like a lone, cold sword standing there. A sword intent soared into the sky and a cold sensation spread out. When Zhang Kai saw this, he said gently, "That is the Drifting Snow Sword sect's first disciple, Lu Xiaoyun. He was ranked 9th in the previous 5-nation youth competition. He was only 18, then. After a few years, his cold sword intent should have gotten more terrifying."